Hello, good afternoon, everybody. We are live. We're live on Smart Money Culture TV and on your TV sets in Texas and Louisiana, as well as streaming live around the world. So it's a big day today across everything. You see big news coming out right and left. We have, of course, there's Speaker Mike Johnson has continued to say that this bill is dead on arrival. This $95 billion bill, he says, is dead on arrival. That remains to be seen. Now, the House goes on vacation or whatever they want to call it, district work or however they call it. Basically, they're not going to be here in Washington. I'm in Washington at the moment. This is where I'm based. They're not going to be here. And that happens, they leave on Friday. So there is a lot, and I mean a lot of pressure to get something over the line before they leave. They leave, they're gone for a week. They're both gone actually for a week. The Senate is gone as well. The Senate comes back the last week of February, and then the House is not back until the 5th of March. So a lot of pressure on them to do this. I think for a number of reasons. Number one of the biggest reasons is that if the president Biden has to give this money over to the people, over to the different countries, to Israel and the Ukraine, without congressional approval, then again, people are going to be wondering, well, what the heck is going on? Why does Congress not need to be why does Congress not have a say in this? And people are going to wonder, well, wait a minute, are things working correctly? And the truth is that they're not working correctly. We have a central bank that has taken over really all the countries of the world besides Russia, Syria, and a few other ones. And the central bank is taxing us, and that's where you get your inflation. So they've lied to us our entire lives about this. They told us inflation was good. Inflation is natural. Inflation is part of everything, and inflation is a tax. And so your real tax rate, the way that you get your real tax rate is you take the rate of the government spending, and then you figure that out, okay? And so just to give you an example, they're going to tax, they expect to bring in $1.6 trillion in income tax this year for 2023, but they spent $6.1 trillion. And so that's actually 4 times. And so the government's books are always have a balanced budget. It's a misnomer. It's a total they always have a balanced budget. Okay, it's always balanced. They just take the money from you via diluting you via inflation. And so that's how it works. And that's the big scam. And that's why Biden really doesn't need Congress to approve it. He could just the central bank can mint the money and send it over, and it's as easy as a click. 90% of the U.S. dollar is digital already. It's already digital, and so they don't even have to print it. Okay, they don't have to take it over in pallets of cash. They can just push some buttons and send it over there, and that's it. So it'll be pretty interesting. Speaker, a lot of it is theatrics. We had Mayorkas get impeached yesterday in the House. This is largely bread and circus. The Senate is not going to hold that up, in my opinion. I mean, you never know. Anything can happen, but I do not see the Senate holding him accountable. And so that impeachment really doesn't mean anything. As well, the impeachment was by one vote. It was by one vote. They got Mayorkas impeached in the House, and we just lost a seat in the. We just turned the seat. They just turned the seat. They lost the seat. They got rid of George Santos for whatever reason. They didn't like George Santos. They got rid of George Santos, and now we have a Democrat there. George Santos was at least Republican. Appeared to me to be eminently controllable. Very easy to control, if you ask me. And anyway, now we have that. So I don't know if these guys are wanting to lose or what. It looks to me like they want to lose. Doesn't look to me like they want to win. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on. So the $95 billion bill, Speaker Mike Johnson has continued to say is dead on arrival. He, though, also continues to say that we need border and this and that and the other. Any bill, I think, that they put together for the border, that this group puts together, I do not have any faith in whatsoever. That last bill, it gave Mayorkas the power to grant asylum basically himself, which, I mean, he's been doing anyway, let's face it. Now you have a situation now where, of course, they're talking now about releasing, they're going to release 16,000 migrants that are held in detention centers because the bill didn't get passed or this and that and the other, basically blackmailing America and letting, but they're going to release those people anyway, guys. They're going to release them anyway. They should release them into Mexico, but they're not going to. Texas, you guys are there on the front line. You're on the front line. God bless Texas. Doing a lot there. The mail-in voting continues to plague the GOP. And I'm not saying that mail-in voting is anything other than it continues to plague the GOP, all right? I'm not going to get on here and get marked by all the powers that be broadcasting. I'm just saying that it appears to be an issue for the GOP. And so that was this early voting, and the mail-in voting is how they really won in New York and Pennsylvania yesterday. 2 big losses for the GOP, big losses. And it's interesting because, it's all this is theatrics. I always said that DC is like Hollywood for ugly people, because these guys, and they get up there and then they get in there and then they're, and they have these big theatrical things. So we're going to hold you accountable. We're going to subpoena you into Congress and this and that and the other. And then they're on TV and they rant and rave and nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens. It's like getting called in is like basically your get out of jail free card or something. I mean, nothing ever happens. So that's why I say it's like Hollywood for ugly people. But this mail-in ballots, we didn't change anything. So after the 2020 election, which say what you want about that. Again, I'm on the broadcast airwaves, okay? So I'll keep it fairly sanitized. But there were, by many accounts, many irregularities. There were a lot of irregularities, right? A lot of irregularities going on. And that is... we didn't, the House and the Senate, they didn't change anything. They didn't change anything, nothing at all. So there's nothing has changed, nothing. So the mail-in is still going on, and the the magic electronic voting machines are still going on. So nothing at all changed. And so that's, I don't really understand is it hopium? I mean, do we have hopium? Is that what where people are looking at in this 2024 election? Are people high on hopium? Actually, I put that on my X account. Are people high on hopium? I don't know. I mean, we didn't change anything. So why would we get a different result? Here, I put that one out. Let me go ahead and just change this. Here we are. Well, I'll pull this up first. This is our friend here, Mike Johnson. What's
the border? Talk about the American people not being listened to. They are crying out to the Biden administration to secure the border. This is not a Republican issue. It's an issue for every single person, and everybody knows it. We know the stories of children being poisoned by fentanyl and cities being overwhelmed by migrant surges. We know House Republicans have shown that we are listening to and holding the administration accountable for this catastrophe. We're listening to the people. We're taking action to hold Biden accountable. Last night, the House voted to approve articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas. Desperate times call for desperate measures. We had to do that. He has abdicated his responsibility. He's breached the public trust, and he's disregarded the laws Congress has passed. But much more has to be done, of course, to secure the border. And what the Senate produced this week is silent on that issue. Senator McConnell and I have spoken about this in frank sessions, and let me be clear here again this morning. The Republican-led House will not be jammed or forced into passing a foreign aid bill that was opposed by most Republican senators and does nothing to secure our own border. It's time for Washington to start showing some love to Americans. On Valentine's Day, this is a good day to point this out. You need to listen to the American people and their needs and take action. And that's why House leadership will continue to govern with Americans' interests at heart. With that, I'll take.
So you have, a situation where, like I said, I mean, it is bread and circus. Let me just remove that for a second. I'll pull that back up in a second. they had to impeach him, this and that and the other. I mean, there's really no chance of this guy, and they impeached him by one vote. They know that's not going to stick. But my theory earlier was that they're going to have to get some type of this $95 billion bill across the line, something. And so they want to feed the people something so that they, I did something. They impeached Mayorkas. They finally impeached Mayorkas. Well, there you go. Well, it's not going to stick. So, I mean, what does it really matter? Okay, so this is what I was talking about with two major losses yesterday, and nothing has been done about the mail-in ballots or magic electronic voting machines. Are we high on hopium by figuring the same won't happen in November? Let's see what this report says.
With the factors that led to it, here he is talking about his victory.
We have very good early return results in the early voting and the absentee ballots. It looks like the weather gets better later in the day.
And later in the day, he was declared the winner. Early voting also playing a major role in state-level special election in Pennsylvania. The race in Bucks County, not far from Philly, was called for the Democrat after just 45% of the vote was counted. He won 85% of early and absentee votes. So let that be a lesson for Republicans that the early voting and the absentee voting does count. Ultimately, regarding the Tom Suozzi, Mazie Phillip race, it was earlier in the month when she actually denounced the bipartisan Senate deal that would have, with the factors that led to it.
So
here he is talking about
85% of the early voting, the mail-in and the early voting, 85%. They won 85% of the early voting, which is the mail-in voting. And of course, sometimes they have early voting when you can go and do it in person as well. That turnout is absolutely horrible. We had that Congress, the congressional seat in New York. We had that one. I should say the Republicans, they shot themselves in the foot by getting rid of George Santos. George Santos was by no means, they're all crooks anyway. So, I mean, I guess he was a different level of crook. So that's, well, we'll see what continues to happen with that. Let me follow on my X here. You can always follow me on X. Put out a lot of information here. The markets, of course, and I'm going to talk about more of that in a second. We're on a commercial break right now in Texas and Louisiana. I did put this up for everybody. A poll here said, should Alejandro Mayorkas be arrested and tried for treason? So far, we have 2,600 votes, and you can go and vote yourself there as well. This is pretty interesting. This talks about what is happening, and we talk about this quite a bit because we're really getting a big-time snow job here by the central bank. The central bank is running the country.
Make you realize just how important that. If the Fed can just print money for the government willy-nilly, then why do we have to pay taxes if they can just print money at will? I know it's a stupid question, but this next video is going to make you realize just how important that question is and why you need to start asking it of all the politicians.
If inflation isn't theft, then why can't people counterfeit money?
If they can just print money, why do we pay taxes?
Wow.
If inflation is not theft and we can just print money and we don't have enough money, we can just print more money and give everyone that doesn't have enough money. Why don't we just do that instead of paying taxes? Inflation is legal counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is criminal inflation. So central banking is a coordinated currency counterfeiting cartel that runs the world. It's a Band-Aid. You know what Milton Friedman said about inflation is that it's just like alcoholism. The good effects come early, right? You print the money, you have the drink, you feel good. The hangover comes later. The same is true of inflation. Every time the crisis comes, you have to print exponentially more money because there are exponentially more liabilities in the system from the last round of printing. And so this is why it's unsustainable, and this is why it always culminates in hyperinflation. Because the central bank has not only the precedent, but also the incentive to continue printing the money until the currency hyperinflates into worthlessness.
Now, I'm going to play a part of that again, because actually the good stuff is right here. Listen to
we
this.
don't have enough money, we can just print more money and give everyone that doesn't have enough money. Why don't we just do that instead of paying taxes? Inflation is legal counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is criminal inflation. So central banking is a coordinated currency counterfeiting cartel that runs.
And guys, that's what it's all about right there. We have a situation in countries around the world where the central bank has bypassed the government and is actually running us. They're running the country, and we're basically owned by these central banks. Welcome back in Texas and Louisiana on Smart Money Culture TV. Smart Money Culture TV in your home, on the TV, millions of people. I just talked to my main man, Fly Mackey, back there. Not yesterday, but the day before. We are adding another show as well in the evening. Gave me the soft commit for it. I think he's excited. But we're also adding, from what I understand, if things go well from his meetings, we're adding another massive amount. We're going to 6x our viewership here in the short order. The plan is to be in front of 50 million people by the end of 2024. If you want to get involved, go to the Smart Money. Blah, 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 blah. I got these banners. He's got a couple of we have a couple of different things here. What does this one say? Smart Money Culture TV. Go to smartmoneyculture.tv. Okay, and click the contact thing and get involved. We're looking for people who can write big checks, $250,000, 100,000. Okay, don't come to us with your last $250,000 or your last 100,000. I know in Texas there we have there's a lot of money. You can also go to the smc.tv, same site, and do it there. But if you make over $350,000 a year, you have at least $100,000 to play around with. Like I said, don't give us your last 100,000. Okay. But we want to talk to you. And we're growing a lot. We're just in the infancy here. And here ourselves, we have the Impact Money Show in the morning. We have the Porter, that's 5 a.m. on your TVs in Texas and Louisiana. We also have the Porter Brothers Show at 11 a.m. And then we're adding one in the afternoon too. My wife is just thrilled about it. So anyway, lots going on there. And, I just did a radio show with Booker Scott. Let me just, I can pull him up here. Well, I don't need to pull him up right now, but I just did a radio spot talking about money, talking about inflation. There's a lot of talk about inflation and what this means. The core, the CPI, the consumer CPI, the consumer blah, blah, blah. I don't even know why I can't remember it today. I said it so many times yesterday. CPI. Consumer Price Index. It happened when I was on the radio too. One thing about getting up at 5 a.m. and doing the show is sometimes you're off a little bit. The Consumer Price Index came in hot. Okay, it came in hot. What that means is that the inflation is higher than they projected. And it was actually considerably higher. They were projecting about a 1.7% inflation rate. They like to keep it at 2%. The reason they like to keep it at 2% is because that's what they believe that you will accept without rioting in the streets. Let me say that again. They like to keep the inflation rate at 2%. Inflation is a tax, okay? So they like to keep the tax or the inflation tax that you have no representation to, but that's given to you by the central bank at 2% because they think that's what they can get away with. So they know once it gets in this 3%, 4%, 5%, 10% range that you will fight back, you'll riot, and you'll say, wait, why are we using this central bank? Why do we need them? And then their scam is exposed. And guys like me coming on telling you every day about the scam, of course, does have an effect as well. A lot of people are waking up to what the scam is, okay? And the scam is, like, let's talk about this $95 billion that they're also desperate to get out, okay? And of course, they just did $100 billion one. Here's the other thing, guys. 1.6 trillion they're going to collect in taxes for 2023, but they spent 6 trillion. The government, the Treasury report says they spent 6 trillion. So that's 4 times. So your effective tax rate is actually 4 times what you think it is. Okay. This year alone already, they've already spent nearly 2 trillion. It was 1.6 trillion that they already spent this year, and that was a week ago. So you can start to do the math of what it's going to be like this year, because they just keep printing money. Our system is completely it's completely turned on its head right now. The normal tax that they collect really doesn't mean anything. They don't have to collect it at all. They tax anyway through the currency. Lebanon is under attack. You have that war heating up over there. But I was going to talk. I think I was going to talk a little bit. I got a little bit sidetracked there on this 95 billion. I know they're desperate to charge this 95 billion to pass this $95 billion bill. One of the reasons is they don't want it to be so obvious that they don't need congressional approval to send the money. The central bank can do whatever they want. The central bank is controlling the money supply, and they don't need congressional approval for anything. They can do whatever they want. It's a privately held entity, and they can issue the bank. The Federal Reserve, which is our central bank, came into existence in 1913, the same year as the IRS. And a year later, we were in World War I. We took a couple years off. We were in World War II by early 1930s. We've basically been at war ever since. What we have going on right now over in the Middle East is very alarming. The Middle East and Russia and Ukraine. These are beautiful places. I've been to the Ukraine. I've been to the Middle East. I've been to Russia. All these different places. And these people, what's going on? They're making so much money. They're making so much money. You look at a $95 billion bill. First of all, the Federal Reserve itself is going to make about $3 billion on that deal. They're going to pocket $3 billion. So that's pretty interesting. Okay. And right now we have, of course, our national debt, which is the debt to the central bank. Okay. The central bank prints up the money. Or they do it digitally. They give it to us, and it's a debt instrument. Everything has about a 3% return to them. Okay, so we'll never pay down the national debt, and then the yearly cost of the yearly amount of money brought in from the income tax pays that money that is the interest on it. So right now at 34 trillion. The interest is 1.6 trillion. And guess how much we're bringing in? I already told you for 2023, 1.6 trillion. So there you go. So if we boom this number up, which it looks like nothing is stopping, because here's the thing too, guys. So first of all, it's costing us, so far this year, they're going to try to pass this thing. They're going to pass something. Okay. Whether it's this or that, or it's something else, they're going to get that 100 billion over there. This is the second 100 billion already for this stuff this year that they're pushing through here. And then we have to rebuild it. So after we tear it all down, we have to rebuild it. So this actually might even be the cheaper part. Tearing it down is always easier than building, right? Pretty interesting stuff that we have going on there. So let me go back to my X account here, because there's just so much going on. So we had a massive explosion in Iran pipeline. I think this was a natural gas pipeline, but I'm not sure. From southern Iran to several major cities. Do you think the CIA and Mossad blew up this one like they did the Nord Stream pipeline, which is pretty widely accepted? Do you think so? I think it's probably pretty likely. I think so. Biden says, "Are you going to stand with Ukraine?" Let's go ahead and listen to him here.
And I say to the House members, House Republicans, you got to decide: are you going to stand up for freedom, or are you going to side with terror and tyranny? You're going to stand with Ukraine, you're going to stand with Putin. We stand with America or with Trump. Republicans and Democrats in the Senate came together to send a message of unity to the world. It's time for the House Republicans to do the same thing, to pass this bill immediately. to stand for decency, stand for democracy, to stand up to a so-called leader hell-bent on weakening American security.
I mean, I think most people, they don't understand what's going on over there in the Ukraine and Russia. Putin did a heck of an interview, though. I think most people think that. And yeah, they don't know. Although I tell you what, if this gets over there, if we pass this again, you know, you're gonna feel it. Like that tax will be taken from you. You will feel that tax in inflation. That you will get taxed that. And the government's budget is always balanced. It's always balanced. Every dollar that they send somewhere, they get from you. That's the way it works. It's always balanced. There is this myth of an unbalanced budget. They always get the money from you. They always get the money from you. And of course, that continues to put up because the central bank fronts the money. And then we never get out of this debt cycle with the central bank, and we don't need the central bank. The central bank has bypassed our Congress, bypassed our Constitution, it's bypassed the White House. They are calling the shots. They're the ones who control the purse strings. If you control the purse strings, then of course everybody knows, then you control a lot, right? So I put this up yesterday. Now, again, Speaker Johnson is saying this is not going to happen. The House is under extreme pressure to pass the Endless Wars bill before Friday. They plan to use the privately held central bank, the Federal Reserve, to tax you from inflation, so you don't know, for the $95 billion to send to Israel and Ukraine. Is that okay with you? And again, remember, there's $3 billion on that. That is their fee to mint that money out of thin air, as you say, to front the money before we get taxed for it. So that's the way the scam works, guys. So instead of coming to you and be like, hey, look, we need $1,000 from every household because we're going to send it over to Ukraine and Israel, where we would say no, right? Well, no, I don't have it. I don't have $1,000. I'm trying to pay for my daughter's college. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to buy a house. What are you talking about? I don't have $1,000. You can't take $1,000 from every household and send it over to these wars we don't know anything about. So instead of doing that, because they know you won't do it, the central bank fronts the money and then they tax you. They take it from you without asking. You have no representation in it. They take it from you without asking, from inflation. And that's the big scam. That's the scam going on. So this is the congressional, this is their, so you see today, it was yesterday, it was the 13th. They're working here, okay, the rest of this week, and then they're gone this week. They're gone until well, that says the 28th. Now, I thought on another thing here, I put this one here. So the blue is the Senate only in session. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that one's wrong. This is the correct one. So the House and Senate is off next week. Senate returns the last week of February. So there you see the Senate is back here on the 26th. Senate only in session. Okay. So the Senate returns last week of February. The House does not return until February 5th. So until the 5th of February. Look for the House to pass some type of endless wars bill this week and hand it off to the Senate. 95 billion is about 2.85 billion profit for the Federal Reserve. Anyone. Now, this is interesting here because this shows that the House is back on the 28th. And I believe I got this one from their website. So it's live TV, folks. Take that. I'll try to make sure that I clarify that coming up here. We have not heard anything, right, from that oral arguments. I don't think we have heard anything. I played this yesterday, but this is
the Senate. Open the champagne, pop the cork. The Senate Democrat leader and the Republican leader are on the way to Kiev. They've got $60 billion they're bringing. I don't know if it'll be cash in pallets, but they're taking your money to Kiev. Now, they didn't have much time, really no time and no money to do anything about our border. We're being invaded. A literal invasion's coming across our border. 800,000 people came illegally in the last month, and all they had time to do in the Senate was get the money, get the cash pallets, load the planes, get the champagne ready, and fly to Kiev. Open the champagne.
Crazy, right? God bless Senator Rand Paul. He really is. He's doing it. I'm going to go ahead and play. We did our finance stuff. And before I get into that, of course, the bombs are flying in Lebanon. There seems to be no end to this war that is going on over in the Middle East. I think that one thing I want to tell everybody about it is that I don't believe that they're going to be able to kill everybody. I don't think they're going to be able to kill everybody. And so if they're not going to be able to kill everybody, then when does the war end? And so it ends with talking. It's just like what we have over in Ukraine and Russia. We need to talk to each other, okay? And Ukraine is not big enough to beat Russia, and Israel is not big enough to beat all of those countries around the entire Arab world, okay? Even if we help them, it'll be long. I mean, it could be very, very bloody. It could be an absolutely horrible situation, but we need to talk to each other. So anyway, this is our money report from this morning. Matt Dixon, the great Matt Dixon, broke things down for us. So I want to bring that in. Here he is right here. Let me share this tab.
With Israel, but I know there's a lot of discord with the way Israel are pushing forward with what's happening with Hamas and Gaza and so on. You go out to, so you've got to start, and I hope you can see this now. I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, there we go. Oh, we're in the green.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, as Warren Buffett always says, basically buy when there's fear, blood on the streets. That's when the dial is right back here in a fear scenario. Right now, we're getting quite advanced in terms of the greed. So most people are positioned long in the market. There's great greed. Everyone's chasing it at the moment. So definitely time to pause for thought. But obviously at the moment, the market, don't go against a trend. The trend does definitely appear to be higher for the time being. Here's actually some interesting, this is from TradingView, and they monitor an awful lot of technicals, which aren't really predictive, but it actually is a really good snapshot of where we're at in the market. And looking at oscillators, the summary and the moving averages, these are kind of traditional technical type of indicators, which, as I say, not really predictive, but they do show you where the market's at. And at the moment, strong buy the Bitcoin. It's basically telling you all the, emphasis and emotion is on the buy side. And so things can change very, very quickly, as we know. And these are the times that Warren Buffett would say, potentially not necessarily the time to be piling in. But those people who were in early are obviously very, very happy. This is the chart that we looked at yesterday. And this is the reason that we're looking at this is we looked at CPI, and I said it's all about whether the expectations are met or failed or exceeded. Clearly, the CPI came out lower than expected. So this has moved interest rate expectations, at least at the moment, the market is saying out until June, until we get a rate drop, because that's what they're basically saying, that rates are basically appropriate. Sorry, inflation came out. It was a surprise yesterday how inflation came out actually lower than expected. So,
well, the inflation came out. I think it was higher than expected.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. Higher than expected.
Yes.
Which actually goes absolutely in line with my argument. So it's obviously came out higher than expected, which is why the fall in interest rates has been booked back now until probably June. They were never going to raise rates, I don't think, in March. I think the Fed chair made that absolutely clear. They weren't going to raise in March. But
He said they would consider further actions, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So, they've now put back potential decline in rates until probably at least June. And that's because they need rates to be higher to try to tackle this elevated inflation, which is a potential concern for markets. It's still well above the target rate of 2%, and it came out much higher than expected, as you rightly say, Bruce. So with it coming out higher than expected, that basically means it's normally a risk-off thing where money would flow out of risk assets, and that's immediately what we saw. We saw a knee-jerk reaction, and as soon as that came out, we saw dollar index spike high. And I remember yesterday I said that we're in a rising trend here, and this is looking at relatively short-term, rising trend on dollar index. And so I said that basically we've got higher highs and higher lows. And I said each of those movements up is impulsive, big green candles, and the corrections are pretty choppy and sideways. And so I said the next expected move you would expect from this chart will be to the upside. And if you look at what actually happened, you can see that this is, we got a massive break to the upside when that news came out as stronger than expected inflation, which means that basically money flowed into the dollar, and we saw quite a strong sell-off in the Dow and the S&P and so on. So
I mean, as far as like for the last few years, it was a strong sell-off. Before that, we used to have $1,000 a day. I remember 1,000-point moves, but we haven't had anything like that. 500 is a big move on the Dow these days.
Yeah, we were down at one point yesterday, 700 and something, but it recovered a little bit towards the end. And we'll look at a chart of the S&P just to see exactly what's happening from a chart perspective. But here's the long-term view on dollar index back from the financial crisis, right back 2008, moving forward. And again, we can see we're in a long-term uptrend there. And until that trend is broken, and to break that trend, you need to actually break below this level. So it would potentially mean quite a substantial drop lower to break this upward trend in the dollar. So for now, long-term, both short-term and long-term, we're actually trending higher on dollar index for the time being. That's not to say the trend won't change and won't be broken. I'm just saying for the time being, we're in the uptrend. And that is precisely what happened yesterday. The uptrend just continued. So that was very, very positive dollar, but potentially negative risk assets. So what that brought me to was trying to look at these correlations. And it's really interesting to see. So at the top, we have Bitcoin. In the middle, we have SPX, so the S&P 500. And at the bottom, we have dollar index. So you can see this is just looking back a year from the beginning of 2023. We can see during the early stage up to the sort of, early part of the year, in general, we saw rises in Bitcoin. We saw a general correlated rise. And these, when we talk about correlated, there are very rarely 100% correlations. There's a percentage correlation. And there is a correlation here. It's not 100%, but they tend to move in a correlated fashion. So Bitcoin moving up here. In general, we see the S&P 500 moving up in the same sort of way. And in general, we're seeing the S&P, the dollar index moving down. So when risk assets are moving up, normally the dollar's moving down and vice versa. And, then when we start to see, for example, here, from this point here, sort of mid-year-ish, we're seeing the risk assets moving down. So we see Bitcoin move down, we see S&P 500 moving down. At the same time, we saw dollar index moving up. And then from October-ish, we started then to see Bitcoin appreciating sharply. We saw the S&P 500 appreciating sharply, and we saw dollar index depreciating sharply. So again, these are positively correlated, and the dollar index is inversely correlated. And that holds really true. But what's really interesting is what's happened just recently. And I did say at some point, I believe Bitcoin could transition to becoming basically a safe haven asset, acting like a safe haven. And it's quite interesting. We're seeing, dollar index moving up sharply. It's actually interesting actually see everything moving up. So even though we're seeing dollar index moving up very sharply, we've actually seen a sharp move up in the S&P 500 and a sharp move up in Bitcoin. This is quite unusual to see, and it goes against what we've seen in general for the past year. And actually, if you go back historically, it's in general, it's, you know, it's unusual to see that sort of strong move. You'd have expected yesterday to have seen something different. So we'll just look at Bitcoin. This is what I showed yesterday. Let's see where I might have gone a little bit wrong with that. I think overall, my view is probably right. I think we had a wave 3 here, complete. And I said this was potentially wave A, B, and expecting C down. I think this was actually A, B, C here. And that is the one problem you sometimes get with Elliott wave analysis, that a correction can actually be complete, or it can be part of a larger correction. So that's why I thought potentially complete here. So obviously what you need to do is readjust your overall outlook. So I've looked at the big picture, and that's where I always look. When you're looking at charts, you start off with a big picture, and you hone in shorter and shorter time frames to try to get a clear picture. So this is the all-time high on Bitcoin. This is effectively, you know, coming from pretty much the start of Bitcoin, all-time highs. Then the big fall we had to the FTX crisis, and then moving up. So potentially we either have, you know, potentially we do have an impulse higher. So wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. So all I did was actually move this internal count up. I had this red wave 3 I had here. I just moved it up to here, 4, 5, the 5 here. So I've just moved up these counts a little bit. So the overall look is similar, but I've had to adjust the internal counts to give us higher potential targets. So we do potentially
as well. I mean, you know, 95 billion, you know, that, like we talk about, you know, it's not just giving away to Ukraine and Israel. I mean, obviously it's for that, but that money gets pumped into the economy. People know that. They know that this is about to come. And so these are factors. These are the larger factors at play.
That's right. Absolutely right. One of the ways to support markets and to support the economy is to effectively create that money and pump it into the economy. And I think that's what's happening. I don't think that, you know, it's a massive amount of money that's flowing into the economy, as you say, into arms, into reconstruction, whatever it might be. But it's money going into the economy, into business. And that's one of the best ways to spend money, government money, is when it creates private jobs. And I think that will be happening. So that's why there's more money that flows into these risk assets. And Bitcoin, you know, it's a combination of a risk and a safe haven. It's actually a really unusual asset at the moment, but I think it will transition. I mean, it does actually have both characteristics. It's amazing with the limited supply, making it very much a safe haven asset, but also there's massive demand for the appreciation of it. So there's a lot of speculation there as well, and a lot of demand driving it higher. So it's quite an unusual asset. We are overbought on the RSI at the moment. That can actually continue. We saw, for example, back in 2021, massive overbought situation there. We're nowhere near as high as that yet. So potentially, Bitcoin can go higher than that. I will actually just touch on the learn how to trade, because it's important to, you know, there's learning how to trade is not about winning every trade. As I say, nobody's got a crystal ball seeing into the future. But trading is a skill that can be learned. And as we mentioned yesterday, 95% of retail traders lose money, only 5% make money. And so people need to learn the skill of trading. And that doesn't mean being right 100% of the time. It means managing your losses effectively, controlling losses so they don't become too large, but also ensuring you get more wins than losses as well. So there's the whole range of course options here that you can go into. And you know, you can actually just begin with a beginner package. You know, just study time of a couple of hours to see if you like it. This one's priced at $250, so it's just something to give you a flavor of if you think it's going to be helpful to you, which I have no doubt it would be. So a couple of self-paced modules with the trading essentials. This is the sign-up link, learnhowtotrade.club. And this is the promo code that has been agreed with Impact Money, the Trade Smart 10. So that will actually give you a 10% discount as well. So it's
I'm pretty excited about getting some people more involved in this. So we'll continue to talk about that, guys. You know, if you learn how to trade, Matt, I don't know if he'll tell you how much money he made last year, but he made a lot. Made a lot of money trading. Now, of course, he's a professional.
I never like to talk about figures, particular figures, but yeah, I beat the market by a substantial margin. So if you can beat the market, you're doing something right. And the market, as most people know, did extremely well last year. So I beat the market. And that, I guess, is what people need to know. You need to be able to beat the market in both up and down markets. And if you can do that in the long term, you'll do very, very well. So it's about risk-adjusted returns. And the risk is that if you just match the market, I mean, that's okay. But normally asset managers don't match the market because they've also got all the costs and so on involved in trading. So nobody actually matches the market unless there are a few unusual traders and funds. They're the sort of, you know, the ones that really stand out, that beat the market over a long time. Warren Buffett had this famous bet that these fund managers couldn't beat the market, and they couldn't over the long term. But there are some techniques where you can potentially beat the market, but it's very difficult for big funds to do that. So we can teach you some really good techniques, hopefully to put you in a good position. Before we leave, I would just like to look very briefly, if we can, at some of the immediate charts. I wanted to look at S&P 500. So this is the kind of longer term view. This is the last final fifth wave up, which itself is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what I really want to focus on is what happened yesterday. So I'm going to go right down. We're on the daily chart here to look at that big wave. We're going to focus on this last little bit. So I'm going to go right down to the 15 minutes and just put that into, just make it so you can actually see what happened yesterday. Just expand the chart out. That may be too much. Let's just see. Yeah, so yesterday we had, if you remember, I said that we had something called this bearish divergence, regular bearish divergence. I focused on that in yesterday's show and said this was telling us there's likely to be a sell-off in the market. And so likely that we would see some elevation in CPI, which is exactly what we saw. We looked at the dollar index. That was what we were basically saying. And I said, if you see CPI going up, you're probably going to see a sell-off. Now, we saw a sell-off, pretty immediate, and we've seen a rebound today in the S&P 500. So that is actually broken down into an impulsive move down, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, and wave 5. What's interesting is you measure a Fibonacci measurement from the top to the end of wave 1, transpose it to wave 2. That's what this measurement here is. I measured from the top to wave 1. You can see there, just transpose that movement to wave 2. And it gave you the precise end of wave 3, 2.618. That's 2 times that golden ratio. So that's amazing yet again. Very, very common Fibonacci extension there, 2.618. Then we got a wave 4, ABC wave 4 up, then a fifth wave down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in a fifth wave down. That's a perfect Elliott wave move, you know, absolute perfection. Then from there, you would expect there to be an ABC higher. So I fully expected we'd see this bounce higher in S&P 500. But because this is an ABC correction, I do expect a further move toward the downside at some point, whether it comes from here, whether we go a little bit higher yet, and within this correction. All I'm saying is we shouldn't go above the start of this move because that would invalidate this impulsive move down. So I'm expecting a further move down. So whatever the markets are telling us, I do expect there to be a further move down in the S&P. This being 5 waves can be either an A wave, then we get B wave up and C wave down, then we push to new highs yet again, or it can be the start of an impulse down, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. For the time being, I treat this movement as a correction. This is for the time being. We need to monitor it to see what the actual situation is. But for the time being, even if you count it as an A, a B, and a C, it still means we would expect there to be lows below yesterday's low point in the market. So I think we'll see that coming today or over the next few days. We will see lower to come. So that is something that I'll be looking to trade. The other thing is, very briefly, we can actually see something called hidden bearish divergence here. So yesterday we had regular bearish divergence telling you of a turn in the market to the downside. That's precisely what happened with the CPI news. And now, with this move up we've had today, we have something called hidden bearish divergence. This is where you see a decline in the highs on price and an incline in the highs on RSI. So it's very different to what we saw with the regular bearish. This is called hidden bearish. So what it's telling you here is...
I just real quick, we're about to... I just want to cut away there, fresh off of the press over here. We have what is going on. Interesting. Remember, I've said now a couple of times that there's going to be a big push in order to pass this spending bill. They really want this money. Number one, the central bank is going to make approximately $3 billion off the transactions. They're going to take the money from you and me on this sneaky tax via inflation. They want to really keep this war propped up over in Israel and in the Ukraine. Everyone's making a lot of money off of this, and it's a sad state of affairs. But interesting, right off the press. Let me just share. Let me make sure I have the right tab here. And I think I do here. So, oh no, wrong tab. Here we are, right here. Share this tab instead. Wrong one. Share this tab instead. Okay, here we are. Today, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence has made available to all Congress members information concerning a serious national security threat. This is the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner. This is just happening while we're doing the show right here. I'm requesting that President Biden declassify all information relating to this so that Congress and the administration and allies can openly discuss the actions necessary to respond to this threat. So this, in my opinion, is the push that I'm talking about. That's what it looks like to me. This is the push. And if things go if it's even harder, they might go ahead and there might be even an attack here.
Is there anything you can say to characterize what this threat is, or is there anything you can say to characterize what this threat is or what country it involves? I mean, should the public be alarmed at this point since he has said this publicly?
I'm not in a position to say anything further today. Like I said, I look forward to the discussion with him, and obviously from there we will determine how to proceed. But standing here at the podium today, I can't share anything further.
Full court press, guys, exactly as I said it would play out. They're going to try to push this $95 billion through one way or the other. The House leaves at the end of the week. So full court press to get something over the line. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where we can't trust anybody. So we will watch that as it goes. Meanwhile, the markets, Bitcoin continues its climb. Meteoric, I would say, climb 51,640. The Dow is tepid. Dow is tepid, up about 23 points. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back at 5 a.m. on your TV sets there in Texas and Louisiana, as well as 11 a.m. tomorrow. That's 6 a.m. and 12 noon on the East Coast of the U.S. See you guys.